Good morning. Good morning. Dr. Jen Fraser, we are here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for being here with me. I cannot wait for our conversation.
I'm so excited and honored that you would have this conversation with all of us on LinkedIn. Um, for those who have not had the great fortune of meeting Dr. Jen Fraser, this is a book group where we are going to be hearing Jen describe her book and read from the new book, The Gaslit Brain. And we will have conversations about the applicability of this book to workplace trauma. So welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here. If you would please kindly introduce yourselves if you feel so moved to do so in the chat. We'd love to know who's with us and where you're logging in from. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started here. We are going to introduce ourselves and then we're going to share a few resources that will help people to feel as grounded and supported as possible during this event. Welcome, Michelle. It's so great that you're here. Thank you for logging in and introducing yourself. Really looking forward to having more people join us. With that, Jen, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jen Fraser. I have a PhD in comparative literature from the University of Toronto. And this is my fifth book. And what I do is basically write about things that I need therapy on. And so I was exposed to gaslighting in the workplace. I didn't even know what the word meant when it happened. And I've been trying to unpack the psychological trauma ever since. And when I discover things, because I'm very much an educator at heart, I want everyone to know. I wish it was things I knew when I was being harmed in the workplace. And so I just think it's a very important conversation to have for leaders, for experts, even for employees, especially for HR, for managers, all employees. All of us can learn how to handle these situations and keep ourselves safe and sane by understanding the brain science. And so basically, I'm marshaling brain science to be able to have this conversation in the Gaslit Brain and then here with you today.
Your work is such an incredible gift and rallying cry for action. I first found your work when I was recovering from workplace trauma. I found your book, The Bullied Brain, and it was a complete game changer. I am going to, because I put on mascara, I'm going to try to hold back the tears, but I am oftentimes verklempt when I think about the impact, Jen, of reading The Bullied Brain, not only in my recovery, but the recovery of my baby who was harmed in utero while I was at an abusive workplace. I get chills thinking about it, Jen, and that's why it's such an honor for me to be here with you, to listen to you read the book. I had reached out to you asking if there might be an audio version of it because the way that I was able to access The Bullied Brain was I listened to it while I was driving my then infant in the car because that's the only place that he would nap for many years. And so I would drive around and I had you in my earbuds and I would heal while my kiddo was able to sleep. And it really literally changed the trajectory of our lives. Learning about the brain science from you regarding neurofeedback, as well as many of the psychological manipulation tactics that are used against us when we are bullied, whether it's at work or at school. Of course, bullying is different between those two areas of one's life. And I'm sure we'll get into it as we kind of continue on. But I want to just say good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. Annette, it's so great that you're here. Jennifer, Pauline, welcome. Thank you, everyone who's logging in. And I just want to let you know that if we don't name you directly, it might be because what we can see on our side of the platform in StreamYard is it just says LinkedIn user if you have high security settings placed on your LinkedIn account. So please know that we are truly grateful for each of you being here. We hope you might in the future choose to share this event with your colleagues, with your friends, maybe your family members, or even your neighbors. We're going to be meeting every Saturday morning as Jen reads through the book. And then we're going to talk afterwards about the implications. My name is Eliana Ramirez. I am a licensed independent social worker and researcher of workplace trauma, and I'm a workplace abuse survivor. And so I'm going to be kind of bringing in the side that has to do with the mental health, the workplace trauma recovery. Really want to make sure that we make this as accessible for you all as possible. So at the end of the event, we're going to have a survey that is totally anonymous if you choose to answer it in that way, to invite you to give us feedback about how we can continue to improve these events as we move forward. In fact, this is the first time that Jen and I have tried to do this. So we're going to have a positive growth mindset about it, and we're going to improve as we go along. As we continue to move forward, please do put any questions or comments that you have in the chat. If you are a person who prefers not to see the chat, that's totally fine. We welcome emails and messages in LinkedIn as well. I'll do my best to kind of keep track of everything that's being mentioned in the chat as we go, as we go along. But we welcome you here. And the last thing that I'll share is that for many of us who are survivors of workplace abuse, it can be kind of activating sometimes to hear about the psychological manipulation tactics because they might resonate with us. So I want to invite folks, it's an invitation only, to settle yourselves and your nervous system as we transition into listening to this phenomenal book that is intense and much needed. So if you're comfortable with it, I would invite you to kind of re-sit in your seat in a way that feels comfortable. Try and kind of move around, move your feet a bit, perhaps your arms, your shoulders, and just find a place that feels as comfortable as possible for a moment. And I'm going to invite you to do what's called box breathing. I learned box breathing from a Marine when I was working at Veterans Affairs for many years. And this is a tool that is used by folks who are facing extreme challenges in the workplace. So if you are a workplace abuse survivor, or if you're currently in a workplace abuse situation, this might be helpful. So box breathing is just a matter of taking a deep breath in, holding it, slowly exhaling, pausing before we take another breath. And then we take a breath in, pause, hold it, exhale, and pause. So I'm going to invite you, you're welcome to close your eyes if you'd like, or just to lower your eyes, whatever feels comfortable. And we're going to take a deep breath in to the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another one. We'll take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you feel comfortable, you're welcome to look up and orient yourself around your room. Look at everything that's green and just kind of notice it for yourself. Jen, in my room, I see a green plant in front of me. There's a green pen in a cup in front of me. I look at my window and there is a green window covering. What do you see in your room that's green?
I am sitting in my sister's apartment in downtown Vancouver, and it is full of plants, the room I'm in. So everywhere I look is green.
Wonderful. Excellent. Cool. So this is just a quick grounding exercise that you can do while you're listening to this book. If you feel that you're finding your heart rate is going fast, or you're feeling a little anxious, feeling like you want to run or push something away, grounding is something that we can do to remind the body and the nervous system that right now we're safe. No matter what memories are coming in to cause us to feel stress, right now we're safe in this room. All right, folks, without further ado, let's get to the meat and potatoes, or tofu, as it might be if you are vegetarian, um, of this event. I'm going to take myself offline and we will listen to Jen speak. Please do put comments in the chat as you hear things that resonate for you and or questions. Jen, we're going to read for about 20 minutes, is that right? And then we'll kind of check in with our audience and see how folks are doing. Great. Okay, I'm
Perfect.
going to exit stage left.
It's shocking to discover that your workplace, which you believed was constructed on the bedrock of truth-telling, is, in fact, more like a flimsy web of lies. It's so flimsy that those who call out the falsehoods and manipulations must be driven out. Telling the truth is the one forbidden act, and those who break this rule must be scapegoated. It's a highly effective deflection. Everyone looks at the scapegoats as they walk away, rather than turning their questioning gaze on the institution. In the gaslit brain, we will turn our questioning gaze directly on the institution. We will ask questions such as, who is abusing and manipulating, and what is happening in their brains? Why are liars believed and truth tellers doubted? What's wrong with our brains? What happens to brains when they are manipulated by gaslighting? Why do good leaders cover up abuse, fraud, safety issues, and more? Why do good leaders drive out whistleblowers, regardless of their high level of expertise and talent, to protect perpetrators who put the institution at risk? What kind of stress does this cause managers and human resources, our HR people? What is happening in the leader's brain? The most important question of the book is, could we do things differently if we knew more about how our brains work? It is important for all workplaces to know that dishonesty increases with repetition, as extensive psychological research documents. Institutions that allow some lies should be aware that they may dominate the workplace, creating a culture that condones falsehoods, with small transgressions gradually snowballing into larger ones. The research revealed that the more an individual tells self-serving lies, the less the brain's amygdala sounds the alarm. The amygdala is a brain region that is commonly thought of as a threat detection center, which gives us alerts and signals when we are at risk. And telling a lie usually puts us at serious societal risk, as it undermines one of our most valued qualities as a person who can be believed and trusted. We are witnessing an unusual social phenomenon whereby lying has become mainstream. It is as if normalizing disinformation, misinformation, and self-serving lies have compromised the effectiveness of our collective amygdala, so that it no longer jolts us when we issue falsehoods. Those who have lies told about them at work, lies so serious that they have cost them their job, knocked them off a hard-earned career path, hurt their place in the community, stripped them of physical and mental health, are the casualties of institutions that normalize deceit. The Gaslit Brain brings together contemporary stories of top employees who are exposed to the lies of bullying and gaslighting. A key defining feature of gaslighting's lies is that they are self-serving. We look at the stories of how lies impacted employees through the lens of brain science. If we don't understand how our brains create reality and the way it differs from illusion, we certainly will not understand when and how our brains fall for falsehoods. The book is designed to prevent crises in the workplace that revolve around the lies of bullying, gaslighting, and institutional complicity. The overarching goal is for leaders and managers and HR to become experts in how to prevent the contagion of lies from infecting their institution, to keep their workplaces healthy, productive, and profitable. Throughout the Gaslit Brain, I refer to workplaces as the institution, regardless of whether it's a corporation or company, not-for-profit, or something else. I use institution to examine institutional complicity with abuse. Likewise, I refer to abuses with the umbrella term bullying. regardless of whether it's psychological, social emotional, sexual harassment, cyberbullying, or any other of the many ways in which a person is targeted for maltreatment at work. The lies of bullying, in all its different forms, are contrasted with the truth-telling of those who speak up. In Chapter 8, we will hear from a lawyer whose career is being dedicated to representing whistleblowers on why telling the truth is so important and yet so fraught with risk. Institutions that protect and enable those who bully are likely to scapegoat whistleblowers. It is this normalized, counterintuitive workplace phenomenon we will examine from a host of neuroscientific angles in the gaslit brain. When the penalty for speaking up impacts your livelihood, career, family, and health, it couldn't be more serious. It's a bizarre sensation to be treated as if you have committed a grave crime, referred to in research as committing the truth. But it is exactly what happens to whistleblowers in all kinds of workplaces. Although the majority fall for, or choose to believe, the institution's gaslighting, which positions the truth teller as the villain, those who see through the illusion to the abusive, fraudulent, dangerous institutional reality and refuse to remain silent about it can teach us all a lesson about how to recognize and resist gaslighting. As we examine in depth, gaslighting hinges on reversals. Its essential goal is to make the truth teller appear a liar. The victims appear as perpetrators, the sane employees as crazy employees. Whistleblowers, striving to save the institution and its integrity, are reversed into saboteurs who apparently are trying to ruin the institution's reputation. The motivation and evidence for wanting to sabotage the institution is not forthcoming. Or worse, it is fabricated, which should cast doubt on the institution, but rarely does. Gaslighting has an agenda. It is a series of elaborate falsehoods, behind closed doors behaviors, smear campaigns shared in private. Gaslighting works hard to divide and conquer, not only populaces, but even individuals. It seeks to divide its victims externally and internally to fulfill its own needs and drives. Those who gaslight ensure that victims are kept isolated, believing that they're the only one, always wondering if it's their own fault. Gaslighting is self-serving. The one thing it cannot tolerate is those who pose questions within the institution or from the outside through investigative journalism and media scrutiny. Those who gaslight keep insiders quiet with non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. When asked to comment in the media, they reply, no comment. When the media seek an official statement from the institution, officials can never give it because they've done their own internal investigation. They are protecting targets. They are maintaining confidentiality. Note the reversals. The fact that the investigation is internal poses instant problems with conflict of interest and suggests cover-up. The institution is destroying targets, but claims it's protecting them. It is breaching confidentiality for its own agenda, but claims it cannot speak publicly. The gaslit brain unpacks individual and institutional self-serving lies. It looks at ways to identify lies, protect your brain from their harmful impact, and maintain your safety and sanity. The book examines the way certain individuals and institutions strive to make you believe something that is not true for personal gain, whether psychological, financial, or reputational. They bully you because of their own psychological dysregulation. They try to manipulate you for money or embezzle your funds, posing as someone they're not, and lying each step of the way. When you speak up, report, call them out, the institution turns on you to protect itself, covers up for leadership's failure to prevent the crisis, and even sacrifices its best and most talented to maintain the institution's reputation. The irony is that their reputation is built on covering up wrongdoing. It doesn't have to be this way. Brain science can teach us a healthier, more productive, and more profitable way forward. In the Western tradition, the first recorded liar, hell-bent on destroying others and gaslighting to do it, is Satan. It's the 21st century, and surprisingly, the lies that fuel gaslighting haven't changed much, if at all. This is good news for all of us who want to be informed about gaslighting before it happens to us or to others in the workplace. In Genesis, appearing to Eve as a snake, Satan, the personification of evil, gets information from her first that he can use to his advantage. Extracting information is textbook gaslighting. Satan learns that Adam and Eve are forbidden by God to eat or even touch the fruit of tree in the garden. The risk is death. Satan takes this information and twists it, casting doubt, undermining God, making it appear that it is God who is in the wrong and not to be trusted. Although Satan seeks destructive power, he accuses God of his own crime. Such a reversal is classic gaslighting. The perpetrator of harm claims to be the victim of harm. It makes your head, or more specifically your brain, spin. But that's the whole point. The lies at the heart of bullying are designed to unbalance you, destabilize you, make you think you deserve it or someone else deserves it because something is wrong with them. What's concerning is how much our institutions get trapped in the same faulty logic. Somehow the one who reports abusive conduct is the one in the wrong, who must be expelled from the workplace and its community, while the perpetrator needs protection. It's mind-bending and has gone on for a very, very long time, but with brain science, hopefully that's about to change. Understanding how brains work, how they can detect lies, how they can be trained to identify gaslighting is the key to preventing the manipulation that occurs when we believe lies. Back to the Bible. The snake says to Eve, "Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." Note that Satan flat out tells Eve that her interpretation of reality and her essential relationship to her maker are both incorrect and untrustworthy. Textbook destabilizing and confusing techniques used by those who are gaslit in biblical times, and they are still going on today. Abusive individuals still use the technique of isolating the targets from those who care about them, such as family and friends. They cast doubt and aspersions on this caring community to constantly increase attention to their bond with the targets and the target's dependence on them. Satan's method has not changed in its modern form. He offers his alternative reality constructed on conjured up half-truths that led Eve and Adam to losing their bond to God, being driven out of the garden, and setting off on a path of immense suffering where they do know good and evil, but rather than being gods, they lose their connection to the divine. The King James Bible credits Satan in his serpentine form as being more subtle than any beast of the field. Gaslighting is frequently a subtle art that holds up a mirror to targets, reflecting their own needs and wants. Eve wants to have her eyes opened. She wants to be godlike. She wants Adam with her every step of the way. She seeks knowledge. Eve has no notion that these desires will be turned inside out by Satan, who seeks to have her ruined. Subtle is elusive, difficult to understand or analyze. It appeals to the shadowy parts of the self, parts that lie within the dark chamber of the subconscious. All of us carry these vulnerabilities, and we can all be manipulated and blind to the betrayal taking place. How can you protect yourself against a betrayal that you can't even see? Where Satan differs from present-day bullies and gaslighters is that he cannot manipulate God. In contrast, abusive individuals are adept at playing on the vulnerabilities and desires of targets, as well as those in leadership positions. They groom the targets while they groom the leaders, the managers in HR, and others in the community. Think of all the times you've read stories about reports of bullying, disregard for safety, fraud, being shared with leadership, management, and HR, yet nothing effective was done. It fell on deaf ears. How is it possible that bullying and corruption go on for years in established, respected institutions? As we examine in later chapters, it requires lies, gaslighting, and the fall of leaders, managers, and HR who go from being principled to being complicit. Some leaders are so gaslit, they don't even know what happened. Notably in Christian iconography, the serpent who appears to gaslight Eve in the Garden of Eden was sculpted to appear as half snake, half woman. This artistic portrayal of the personification of evil associates Satan with Eve, engendering a misogynistic narrative whereby the woman brings original sin into the world. But from a psychological and neuroscientific angle, Satan reflecting Eve's wishes and desires by mirroring them is textbook gaslighting and is still being used effectively today. The psychopath not only puts on a fictional face to mirror what the victims want, but also love bombs them, creating intimacy that lays the groundwork for manipulation and destruction. The perpetrator's allies, who fell for his gaslighting and followed his nefarious directives, might suffer serious penalties, while the perpetrator walks away with impunity. Merriam-Webster's dictionary announced that 2022 saw a 1,740% increase in searches for gaslighting, with high interest throughout the year. We are living in an age of overwhelming disinformation, and apparently people want to know why. What or who is the source? What is the motivation? Individuals want to learn more about gaslighting and how it uses lies to manipulate them. Merriam-Webster refines the term for today. The idea of a deliberate conspiracy to mislead has made gaslighting useful in describing lies that are part of a larger plan. Unlike lying, which tends to be between individuals, and fraud, which tends to involve organizations, gaslighting applies in both personal and political contexts. The key line is lies that are part of a larger plan. Lies that are part of a larger plan is the domain of the dark triad, who spread disinformation throughout the institution as it succumbs to their psychopathic fiction, as we discuss in greater detail in part 2. Whether it's the macrocosm of political propaganda or the microcosm of institutional complicity, as we study lying and gaslighting, we see that asking questions about the agenda, the larger plan, can help in recognizing falsehoods and manipulation. Writer, historian, and activist Rebecca Solnit lasers in on the agenda. What's striking about gaslighting is that it's an attempt to push a lie or a distortion by using advantages of power, including credibility and social status, to overwhelm the gaslit person or populace. It's another kind of violence, not against bodies, but against facts and truth. What we need to know in the workplace is that those who attain positions of power, credibility, and social standing may also be part of the dark triad. Narcissistic managers in particular tend to rise to management positions in organizations in disproportionately large numbers. Being particularly self-absorbed, they are known to use and abuse their subordinates and play up to their superiors to assure their own personal career success. We tend to think that a person who has earned a position of credibility and social standing is de facto trustworthy. However, as noted, the opposite is more likely to be true. As we will examine in part 2, narcissists, Machiavellians, psychopaths, in other words, the dark triad, rise up through the use and abuse of subordinates. They gaslight and groom them just as they gaslit and groom their superiors. They are more likely to lie than to tell the truth. Throughout the gaslit brain, we make a case, especially when drawing on the brain science, for the repeat error we make in mixing up position and person. We constantly fall for the power, credibility, and social standing of an individual's position that leads us to excuse or not even see destructive behavior done by the person. When we know powerful and prestigious positions may well be filled by narcissists and others in the dark triad, we need to become far more alert and aware about how they may operate in destructive ways. Psychologists Dr. Robert Hare and Dr. Paul Babiak refer to the psychopaths at work as snakes in suits. They describe the impact of gaslighting, which perfectly outlines what happens to Eve. Victims will eventually come to doubt their own knowledge of the truth and change their own views to believe what the psychopath tells them rather than what they know to be true. Imagine how you are likely to doubt yourself when in a courtroom with a judge who labels you with the ancient mythic crime of Eve. That, Eliana, is 20 minutes. Do we want to keep going, or do we want to stop and talk?
You know what? I think people are really engaged in what you're sharing. So I would invite you to keep reading. And thank you to everyone who's putting comments in the chat. I'm keeping notes of them and we will come back to them. So if you have questions in particular, please do feel free to share them in the chat. Thank you.
As reported by Amrit Dhillon in August 2023, the Supreme Court in India created a handbook for judges, urging them to shun words like seductress, vamp, spinster, and harlot when talking about women. Note, perpetrators are not using these misogynistic and derogatory terms. Judges are. In Indian courts, sexual harassment is trivialized as Eve teasing. This phrase positions Eve as weak, easily manipulated, carrying the taint of original sin, and along with it, Adam's downfall. Since biblical times, Eve apparently teases men to their demise. She is embodied in all women for thousands of years, and women are apparently still at it, teasing men who sexually assault them. A man commits rape. It's the perpetrator. But when you factor in Eve teasing, it's easy to use gaslighting to reposition him as the victim. At present in India, judges can give rapists the option to marry their victim, as if she is the perpetrator, to restore the woman's reputation. In this legal construct, she did the teasing and got raped. Now the rapist can marry her to erase her teasing. According to this skewed way of thinking, the fault originally lies with her. In this reverse narrative, the rapist can heroically step in and remove her crime by offering his hand in marriage. It's hard to understand why the man is even in court if it's his decision whether to destroy or enhance the woman's reputation after he's raped her. In the Supreme Court of India's new handbook, the Chief Justice of India exposes the gaslighting at work. He writes that marriage is not a remedy to the violence of rape. A remedy to the violence of rape, as noted above, is to do a brain scan and diagnose the empathy erosion in the rapist and assess whether he poses a danger of violating others. Instead, in India, the courts plan to cure rape with marriage. Let's unpack the manipulative reversal at work. A perpetrator commits a crime against a target. The court does not penalize the perpetrator. Instead, the perpetrator is offered an opportunity to cure or remedy the sickness of the violation. What speaks volumes to me about this legal transaction is the deafening silence of the victim. Not only is she not offered an opportunity to choose a cure for what has been done to her, she does not even have a space in which to speak about the violence done or how she wants to proceed. In a culture that describes sexual harassment as Eve teasing, one wonders what victims would say if they had voices. How many do you think would choose to marry their rapist? How many would feel thankful and relieved that their rapist had agreed to restore their reputation after raping them? How many of these 21st century victims would argue that the rapist is Terrius teasing? If ancient texts are relevant to contemporary crimes, then Indian women need to balance the Eve teasing with an equivalent male predecessor. We are in a court of law, after all, and legal precedent is the way to understand and assign accountability. In another ancient text, Ovid's Metamorphoses, Terrius poses as a caring family member by law. He presents his good side and covers up his abusive side. He is married to Procne, who is the sister of Philomel. He has offered to accompany the sister Philomel on a boat journey to see Procne at their home. On the journey, he drops the sheep's clothing and rapes his sister-in-law. Fully in abusive mode, he cuts off Philomela's tongue to ensure her silence about his crime of rape. Notice that his conduct provides a closer parallel to contemporary rapists than Eve ever does to female victims of a violent sexual assault. Both with the ancient rapist from Roman mythology in Ovid's Metamorphoses and the contemporary rapist in today's courtroom, not only is there a violation of the female body, but this extreme harm is then followed by silencing the victim, legally in court and literally in the myth. The mythic silencing is today's NDA, when used to cover up, for instance, the many rapes by a Harvey Weinstein. We will discuss this in more detail in Chapter 4. Why is Terrius teasing not institutionalized and precedent setting like Eve teasing? Why is it not used by the Indian legal institution to address rape? Let's review one more time to cut through the normalizing. Eve teasing in this new handbook for judges is textbook gaslighting. The symbolic woman Eve is positioned as the actual perpetrator and the rapist is her victim. Note the reversal. The manipulation of justice by language used to eliminate female civil rights and bestow them upon men who are offered the chance to save their woman victim through marriage is a glaring sign of injustice. The judges now have a handbook that does not prohibit such language or rulings. It merely urges them to refrain from this archaic treatment of women because it may lead to a, quote, distortion of the objective and impartial application of the law, end quote. It appears that even in 21st century courtrooms, where words determine innocence, guilt, and sentencing, the jury is still out on whether terms or word choice matters. Language is critically important when you're exposed to the lies of bullying and gaslighting. You cannot recognize the manipulation without extreme clarity around word choice, as we will focus on in part 3. In 2023, Diane O'Leary reported that the term #medical gaslighting had taken social media by storm, but this application of the term differs from how we'll use it. Thousands of posts by patients, mostly women, report that doctors have ignored, minimized, or dismissed their symptoms, misdiagnosing them as anxiety or stress with serious consequences. Although this is awful, it is not precisely gaslighting in the way that we are using the term. Doctors do not benefit from putting patients at risk. If anything, they open themselves up to accusations of malpractice, loss of reputation, possible lawsuits. Although they may well be sexist or careless, they have no overarching agenda to misdiagnose female patients. Doctors receive lopsided education and training that has seen most research done into male health, and they make errors when diagnosing women's illnesses. Their misdiagnoses are unfortunate at best and dangerous at worst, but they aren't self-serving lies. It's a complex question because gaslighting in the courtrooms of India also doesn't directly benefit judges, but it forms part of an overarching misogynistic approach to justice. We could say that this same flawed approach influences medicine in ways that put women's lives at risk. The key point here is to understand that in our use of the term in the gaslit brain, gaslighting is carefully orchestrated, consciously done, and it serves the one using it. The book examines gaslighting among individuals and at the institutional level. The goal is to provide readers wanting to understand how gaslighting works and why we're vulnerable to it with an in-depth treatment of its seductive, malicious manipulation. Only when we understand intellectually, emotionally, and ethically how gaslighting works and why it's used in bullying can we begin to put in place neuroscience-informed protections to save our health, our sanity, our careers, and our lives. The term gaslighting entered the popular consciousness through a 1944 film, the American psychological thriller Gaslight, in which a husband wants to make his newlywed wife lose her mind, to have her locked up in an asylum. His agenda is to steal jewels that he knows are hidden in her late aunt's house where they are living. The movie's name is symbolic of the many manipulations the husband undertakes to gaslight his wife into believing she's insane. The film is set in London in the late 19th century when lamps were fueled by gas. The wife notices that their lamps randomly go dim. One way the husband destabilizes her is by denying that the gas lights are indeed dimming. It really is such a small manipulation. It's so minor that you might not make much of it. The husband has been showering his new wife with adoration, referred to in abusive relationships as love bombing, making it unlikely for her to think he's being deceptive. When the wife is told that the gas lights are not dimming, she chooses to believe her devoted husband and doubt her own perceptions. This is the beginning of what could be the end. The wife not only notices that the gas lights are dimming, but also that sounds are coming from the attic. Her husband denies the sounds. She can't find her brooch, even though she knows it was in her purse. He has removed it without her knowing. She finds a letter from one Sergius Bauer, and her once adoring husband becomes furious with her. Later he explains that he became upset because she was upset, which she wasn't. The husband tells his wife that the gas lights are not dimming, there are no sounds coming from the attic, she lost her brooch as it was not in her purse, she didn't see a letter from Sturgis Bauer. On top of all that, he tells her that she stole a painting. And he has found out that her mother was put in an asylum. These are the textbook reversals and manipulations of gaslighting. He convinces his wife that not only is she fabricating things that don't exist, but also that she's a kleptomaniac, too high-strung, and unwell to be out in public. She must be crazy like her mother. Stealing the aunt's jewels is symbolic of a much more deadly crime, stealing his target's sanity. The husband is building a case for how his wife is obviously unstable and untrustworthy. Slowly but surely, the wife begins to lose her grip on what's real and what's false. She loses faith in her own perceptions. These are the textbook symbols of the gaslit brain. In a hilarious recent reference to the film, political and sport commentator David Squires did a cartoon series on Luis Rubiales, president of the Royal Spanish Football Federation, who became an overnight social pariah by grabbing forward Jenny Hermosa at the FIFA World Cup awards ceremony and forcibly planting a kiss on her mouth. Rubiales, with a well-established reputation for doing what he likes with women, in a sports and country seething with issues around entrenched sexism and sex abuse, tried to gaslight the whole world by saying the kiss was consensual. It was a valiant attempt, and he probably has used this technique effectively many times. He gave a rousing speech to his powerful football leadership community about how he would absolutely not be resigning, and the room full of men erupted in applause. You can well imagine that the tried and true technique of calling Jenny Hermosa a liar, who consented, then tried to blame him for the kiss, would work its gaslighting magic. But this time, it didn't. Sometimes gaslighting doesn't work. David Squires, in his cartoon, encases Rubiales' head in a 19th century gas lantern, as he comically tries to convince the world to fault Jenny, his victim, not him. Rubiales is lying while telling the world that Jenny Hermosa is a liar. It's textbook. Luckily for the 1944 wife in the movie Gaslight, it being a Hollywood movie and all, a policeman takes an interest in the unfolding manipulation. It turns out that the wife is merely useful to the husband and he exploits her for his own means. Remember, those who gaslight have an agenda. Their targets are merely pawns. A trademark of those who gaslight is to have no empathy for the target. In the movie, it turns out that the husband is the one who's untrustworthy. It's him who steals, not his destabilized wife. Another trademark of those who gaslight is that they accuse their victim of possessing their own negative traits. They lie and accuse their targets of lying. They have dysregulated brains, as we will examine in detail later, and accuse their targets of being dysregulated, and so on. In the movie, it is then discovered that the husband had murdered his wife's aunt. Although he killed her, he failed to locate her jewels. Those who gaslight others are not fazed by those who suffer, or even die, in the wake of their destructive impulses. They do not feel guilt or experience regret. Another textbook aspect of gaslighting, the husband covers up his true identity with a fake one. He says he's the pianist Gregory Anton when in fact he's the murderer Sturgis Bauer. This is the classic textbook split personality, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which we will discuss in greater detail in Chapter 6. In institutions, gaslighters use their position to cover up the harm they do, just like Dr. Jekyll exudes the qualities of a respectable, caring physician, which is an effective cover for his violent impulses. The abuser must appear as good to cover up his plan to do evil. Gaslighting in a marriage is disturbing. Gaslighting in an institution, such as a corporation, a church, school, sports club, courthouse, retirement home, government agency, news station, or political party, is deeply disturbing. The target in the marriage may lose her mind and come to believe she is, in fact, corrupt and insane. Her relationship to reality becomes unhinged. As has been demonstrated throughout history, the target in institutional gaslighting leads to whole segments of society losing their minds and coming to believe whatever alternative facts and fabricated events they are being fed by those in positions with power, credibility, and social status. This collective madness can occur in cults and even in nations. We are well informed by history how incredibly dangerous and destructive this manipulation can be. Keep going.
Maybe this would be a good time to pause. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jen. This is deeply powerful writing. There are so many comments in the chat here, and we're going to go into some of them in a moment. I wanted to make sure that you get a chance to drink some water and take a breath. It's a lot of work to read constantly, and you're doing brilliantly.
My problem is I have an unbelievable cold. I'm just at the end of it, but I've been like really sick for 2 weeks. And so I keep getting a catch in my throat. So next week will be better. Everybody hang in there. This is going to be my worst reading session. But yeah, that's why I have to keep drinking water because my throat's like bad.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're taking care of yourself. I had no idea that you were sick. That's not coming through. I'm sorry also that you're sick, and thank you. Thank you so much, even in the midst of sickness, to come here. I know this is such a passion of yours, and truly, Jen, the work that you do makes major waves in so many of our lives. And so really, truly, I mean, you're sounding phenomenal. And I'm so glad that you're taking sips of water. I want to invite everyone to have coffee or tea or water. The more that we can hydrate ourselves while we listen to intense content, the more likely we are to be able to take in the intensity of the content in a way that is tolerable by our systems. So I want to go into some of these comments here. We've got just so many people that are speaking. Pauline says, thank you, Jen. That is a lot of work. Bless you. You're great. Annette says, so brilliant. I've been way too busy, gripped by listening to you to ask any questions. So this is really great to know. We're wanting to create an event where people can be engaged. And it's hard to listen and type at the same time. So just really appreciate the folks who have been able to write some questions and comments. And I'm going to bring them up here in just a second. I want to acknowledge if people are feeling activated, if you're having a trauma response, I have placed in the comment section a link to crisis resources. They are available to you. So we'll just get into some of these comments here. We've got Ryan Kavanagh says, thank you for helping others. I used to be traumatized. Then I became pissed. Then I launched my own crusade. And then now I am all cool. I just want to help others like Jesus did. I can't stand these ugly, evil, dark types. Whew. So it was so powerful to hear you talk about the original gaslighter as Satan. Clearly, if these strategies are being used for time immemorial, it's because they work.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit, please?
Yeah. No, I was as amazed as you were. I mean, being an academic, I was like, wow, how far do we trace this back? And so I wanted to look at the past. I'm like, what are people saying in contemporary courtrooms right now? And I was so staggered at the fact that time has collapsed when you come to talk about this. And as I talk about later in the book, it's really interesting. I mean, I was trying to figure out who's the first person that started talking about this idea of, wolves in sheep's clothing. Well, it's attributed to Jesus. I'm like, who is it who really sort of honed in on false prophets? And it's like, it's attributed to Jesus. And then as you go on, he's the one that says what Satan embodies. So what the personification of evil embodies is deception. He is the origin and the embodiment of falsehoods. That's how serious falsehoods are. And at the same time, it's not illegal to gaslight. So that's my big crusade. And I love that comment about, now I'm pissed and now I'm on a crusade and I want to help others. That's where Eliana and I are too. That's why we're doing this. It's pretty, as you say, Eliana, it's about the efficacy of these tactics, and yet you can do them with impunity. It's a big problem.
It is, and I've seen with clients who I provide workplace trauma therapy to that it can be really helpful to realize that these tactics that can break through a sense of self, that can cause catastrophic career interruptions, are not a sign of weakness of the person who's been targeted by gaslighting. In fact, the way for us to interpret these tactics that go back time immemorial, and we've just talked about a Christian perspective on this. My guess is all major religions are going to have stories that talk about gaslighting, that talk about the process of psychologically manipulating others for the purpose of evil. And I would love if people would share in the chat if you have other examples from other religions or spiritualities. We'd love to hear about them. But I think it's so important, and I found that my clients respond powerfully to this idea. There's nothing wrong with you. You have been targeted by tactics that are so effective that they go back generations, that they go back to our earliest biblical texts. It's really not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of anything other than you are a human being who has been injured.
And, I would just add to that what I found, and as we will see as we go through the gaslit brain, really the people that get targeted, they do tend to have certain qualities. And our society is so gaslit. We fall for the gaslighting in a collective way, as we were talking about, where we think, oh, it's a vulnerability, it's a weakness, it's something wrong with the target. We're going to protect targets. And so we have protected classes in the law. But really, when you look at gaslighting, the people that are most often targeted, it has nothing to do with a weakness. That's not what takes them down. That's not what makes them the target. It's that they're usually really talented, highly intelligent, and they have integrity. That combo causes so much stress and anxiety and suffering for the dark triad, because ultimately they're very hurt people. That's the one thing they can't bear it. They have to get that out. And so it's really your power that makes you targeted, not your weakness.
Oh, Jen, that is like a healing balm to hear this. And I'm aware of research that backs up what you talk about, whether it's from the Workplace Bullying Institute, Dr. Gary Namey. People might be aware that his organization does an annual survey, nationally representative sample, that they have found exactly the same thing. And you've seen it in many other people's research as well, that for workplace abuse survivors to realize after their careers have been catastrophically interrupted, perhaps their professional reputations have been smeared, that they are not the gossip that's put out about them. Instead, they have just joined a group of incredibly powerful people who with integrity and subject matter expertise, and that this is actually something to be proud of. And it was a major turning point in my own workplace trauma recovery to realize I wouldn't want anyone to be in this group, but my goodness, what an incredible group of people to be surrounded by. So it's one of the most painful compliments that a person can receive in the workplace. I want to bring up a couple of additional points here. Linda says, what I find challenging is that the companies have these false wellness statements and quote unquote, speak up culture. Oh, people are putting comments so quickly. It's wonderful, but I've just lost what I was reading. Let me get back to it. Give me 1 second here. Let's see if I can move this back up. So she says, yeah, speak up culture. But what I found that they believe those statements, until it makes someone in leadership uncomfortable. Then you become the problem. Ooh, Jen, this seems like a kind of classic thing that's really happening quite a bit right now as people talk about wellness culture. Would you mind sharing any thoughts that you have on this point?
I think it's such an important point, because when you are surrounded by slogans and your workplace or your sport institution has a big policy and procedure manual, or your school, and so all of these things encourage you to lower your defenses. You lower your defenses, you believe that you can trust, you tell the truth when you believe it's required, and the next thing you know, as this individual is sharing, Linda, you become the problem. And it's an absolute shock to your system. Your nervous system is devastated by this kind of, I've opened myself up, I'm with people I know and trust, I've built relationships over the years, I have believed the messaging. And now all of a sudden, I've just been hit completely hard. And this is where the moral injury comes in. This is where the betrayal trauma comes in. And really what is fascinating on all of this is what it's doing to the brain. The brain is not well suited to this kind of virtue signaling, window dressing, all of these platitudes that when push comes to shove vanish in thin air. Our brains are just devastated by it. And this is why I'm so interested in teaching people using the brain science. It's not me, it's just me being the conduit for it, is there are ways we can create neurological armor that keeps us a lot safer from that kind of stuff, as we will get to. It's the part 3 of the book.
I am so grateful that you've written the book, that you would be willing to spend your Saturday mornings with us reading. And I want to just shout out and thank Sharon. Sharon adds, Jen also writes on Substack. Check out what she is sharing, and she has graciously put in your Substack link as well. So that's in the chat for folks too. Thank you, Jen. I am going to exit stage left again and invite you to continue reading if you would, please.
Okay. In 2022, the term gaslighting was published in a United Kingdom High Court judgment for the first time in what is being called a milestone hearing in domestic abuse cases. Describing the case, Maya Oppenheim defines the act as follows, quote, gaslighting refers to manipulating someone by making them question their very grasp on reality, by forcing them to doubt their memories and pushing a false narrative of events, end quote. Although this is being legally identified as manipulation in a marriage, it applies equally well to the workplace. Those who tell the lies of bullying and gaslighting at work make targets question their grasp on reality, force them to doubt their memories, and push a false narrative of events. This false narrative is often believed by higher-ups who've been carefully groomed over time to believe in the power, credibility, and social standing of the one bullying. In this legal ruling, gaslighting is viewed as part of a campaign of psychological abuse that uses coercion and control to destabilize someone. Those who study workplace bullying frequently deplore the coercion and control leadership model entrenched in corporate culture. What's textbook in this case is that the husband, who was a mental health worker, used the power, credibility, and social standing of his profession to tell his wife and others that she was bipolar. Ironically, the gaslighting brain is the one that more closely resembles a dual personality disorder that shifts in mood from being the caring husband one moment to being the manipulative villain the next. Gaslighting works on reversals, as we examine throughout our analysis of it. And this is a textbook reversal. The husband uses his position to appear to be a caring professional when he's harming his wife as an abusive husband. As reported by Oppenheim, the wife's lawyer, Charlotte Proudman, a leading human rights barrister in England, said that the judge's use of the term gaslighting gives it legitimacy and credibility. In her experience, she notes that abusers have long been warping victims' realities, yet there's been no legal term to shed a light on the problem. One of the most effective tools to identify and dismantle the siren song of gaslighting, whether in a marriage or a workplace, is language, as we discuss in detail further along. Gaslighting depends on language and cognition to manipulate others. Therefore, one of the most effective antidotes is attention to language and cognition. Controlling the narrative, silencing questions and concerns, forcing the community to adhere to the institution's fabricated facts, all prop up the harms of institutional complicity. Lawyer and workplace bullying expert Paul Peltier finds that the lies of workplace bullying flourish when the leadership operates from a coercion and control model, as identified in the manipulative and dysfunctional marriage under scrutiny in the UK High Court. coercion and control as a leadership model sets the stage for the drama of bullying, gaslighting, and institutional complicity to unfold. Psychiatrist Dr. Helen Reese discusses leaders who use fear and intimidation to exert their authority. As we see throughout the Gaslit Brain, she uses the concept of infection or contagion to describe its impact. Quote, "This type of failed leadership tends to spread across organizations like the plague." As we will see, bullying and gaslighting, both techniques to exert coercion and control, are entwined and sicken workplaces in tandem. A year later, in 2023, a lawsuit was launched in New Jersey. Once again, gaslighting is one of the alleged behaviors that drove Joseph Nye, former president of prestigious Seton Hall University, from his institution. As reported by Ted Sherman, Nye alleges violations of the law against the former chairman of the board at Seton Hall, including the sexual harassment of Nye's wife. As a whistleblower, Nye alleges he was targeted with gaslighting, retaliation, and intimidation, which led him to resign. Attacks on those who speak up are textbook. Institutional complicity in silencing those who speak up uses textbook methods, and gaslighting is long overdue to be understood as one of the weapons in their arsenal. Dr. Dorothy Susskind, an expert in workplace bullying, refers to the specific abuse meted out to those with high ethical standards, taking us back to this integrity piece that the dark triad cannot tolerate. So let's say Dr. Dorothy Susskind, an expert in workplace bullying, refers to the specific abuse meted out to those with high ethical standards as a degradation ceremony. Although gaslighting is being recognized in the law, it is not fully understood from a psychological and brain science perspective, and it is rarely applied to workplace culture. In 2023, psychologists Priyam Kukreja and Jatin Pandey developed a gaslighting at work questionnaire. They call it the GWQ, Gaslighting Workplace Questionnaire, that revealed two key components in workplace gaslighting: trivialization and affliction. According to psychologist Mark Travers, trivialization may take the form of making promises that don't match their actions, twisting or misrepresenting things you've said, and making degrading comments about you and pretending you have nothing to be offended about. Victims start down the path of wondering if they're being too sensitive. Affliction may take the form of excessive control, making you self-critical, creating dependence, or being very sweet to you, then flipping a switch, becoming hostile shortly after. Again, this kind of maltreatment causes self-doubt. Kukreja and Pandey conclude the GWQ scale offers new opportunities to understand and measure gaslighting behaviors of a supervisor toward their subordinates in the work context. It adds to the existing literature on harmful leader behaviors, workplace abuse, and mistreatment by highlighting the importance of identifying and measuring gaslighting at work. Introducing a questionnaire on gaslighting is an effective way to draw attention to how this form of manipulation occurs. Equally important, it provides vocabulary for workplaces to understand and discuss this specific form of abuse. In recent years, Forbes began publishing articles on gaslighting in the workplace, indicating that it is on the leadership radar. Jonathan Westover advises on, title of his article is, How to Avoid and Counteract Gaslighting as a Leader. And his approach is insightful, but only if you're dealing with healthy brains. In terms of avoiding becoming a leader who gaslights, you could apply his approach. And these are his points. Practice regular self-reflection and foster intellectual humility. Actively listen to the perceptions of your team members. Practice vulnerability and own up to your mistakes. Develop and sustain authentic relationships of mutual accountability and trust. The problem is, as we will examine in detail in the following chapters, those who tell the lies of bullying and gaslighting do not experience self-reflection. They do not feel humility as an emotion, just like they don't feel guilt and remorse. They are disinterested in others' perceptions, as their brain tends to objectify targets. They oftentimes experience a roller coaster of shame and grandiosity, and they deny vulnerability or the possibility that they have made a mistake. In short, they cannot have authentic relationships. They follow an abusive script that turns them, if not stopped, into a caricature who repeats bullying, lies, and gaslighting manipulations over and over. They avoid accountability and see trust as a game they want to win. Using psychological research to understand how the brains of manipulators work hopefully will give us a better chance to prevent their negative impacts in the workplace. Manzar Bashir describes 6 textbook gaslighting behaviors. Quote, trivializing your feelings, shifting blame, projecting their behavior, insulting and belittling, creating confusion and contradictions. But he articulates one in particular, withholding information, that is very tricky to identify and yet can have devastating impacts. Gaslighters often use a tactic of withholding information and keeping you in the dark about crucial matters. By selectively sharing or concealing facts, they manipulate your perception of reality and limit your ability to make informed decisions. It's insightful. He shows that gaslighting, along with a great deal of psychological manipulation, is harmful in its omission and passivity. In other words, it's the opposite of how we measure the harms of physical abuse. When you hurt somebody's body, we assess severity by how much active damage was done. But when the brain has been manipulated, we need to find ways to figure out how much lack of action causes damage. Physical assaults are designed to weaken and harm the body. Assaults via gaslighting are designed to weaken and destabilize the brain and the mind. Injuries to the body are far more likely to get immediate treatment, whereas neurological damage to brain architecture, disruption of the mind's ability to function healthily, are too often ignored. Psychologists and brain scientists have developed extensive evidence about the way in which gaslighting brains operate, notably different from brains that do not manipulate. It's time we learn this key information to protect ourselves from gaslighting in institutional contexts. Knowledge of psychopathic brains and the way they work can better protect us from the gaslighters' domineering manipulation and their cruel capacity to exploit us for their own purposes. The book is organized into 3 parts. Part 1 of The Gaslit Brain draws on the stories of recent targets of bullying and gaslighting in the workplace. I unpack my personal experience with the lies of bullying, gaslighting, and institutional complicity within the context of other victims who, like me, refuse to conform to a corrupt workplace and now speak up publicly about how destructive and risky it is to allow a false narrative to dominate the truth. We hear from Megan Carl, a top executive at Nike, Jonathan Wilson, a detective superintendent in Scotland Yard, and Julie McFarlane, a law professor at the University of Windsor. Stories are one of the best ways to educate, as the brain remembers them effectively. As neuroeconomist Daniel Kahneman explains, when learners are surprised with a statistical fact, they do not learn. But if you surprise them by an individual case, they can learn the key lesson or how to take the generalization from the individual scenario. My individual case, put alongside the cases of Carl, Wilson, and McFarlane, is surprising, and hopefully all encourage leaders, managers, and HR to take useful generalizations from our individual scenarios. In part 2, we learn the psychology behind why we are blind to betrayal and who seeks to betray us. For educated, experienced, intelligent leaders in their field, such as Carl, Wilson, and McFarlane, it seems unbelievable that they, of all people, could have fallen for the manipulations of bullying and gaslighting. Why do we put on blinders to betrayal at work? What is going on? Equally surprising is to learn about those who betray and abuse. How and why do they lie so effectively that we fall for it? The science that explains the neuropsychology of abuse perpetrators is key information to help us stay safe and sane. It's a good way to take off workplace blinders and keep them off permanently. Those who deal in the lies of bullying and gaslighting are so skilled at manipulation that they can even lead psychiatric experts to doubt themselves and to subscribe to the manipulator's version of events. There's no shame in being tricked by them, but there are ways to protect yourself, your team, and your institution. There are ways to have leaders, managers, and HR educated and empowered to identify perpetrators early and effectively manage the mayhem and risk they bring to the institution. Psychological research provides ample evidence of the many mistakes our brains can make when we are assessing and deciding what's real and what's false. Considering how high stakes the decisions are when it comes to bullying, abuse, corruption, gaslighting, institutional complicity, we will be far better positioned to stay safe and sane when we learn how to manage our brains, avoid typical errors, and capitalize on our mental strengths. Part 3 of the Gaslit Brain offers leaders, managers, and HR a way to apply brain science insights to recognize and resist the lies of bullying, gaslighting, and institutional complicity. We look at 6 proven ways, well established in research, to learn how our brains construct reality and why they're susceptible to manipulation. Recognizing the self-serving lies of bullying and gaslighting begins with understanding how our brains differentiate reality from illusions. Knowing how your brain decides to believe one person and not another clearly will be helpful as you navigate the workplace and mitigate risks in your institution. Creating a culture and shared vocabulary around knowing how and why our brains fall prey to manipulation allows leaders, managers, and HR to prevent lies from infecting the institution. The first proven way strengthens exteroception, which is how our brains make sense of incoming data from the environment. We discover why it's incredibly important to keep these fundamental pathways in the brain fit and strong. Neuroscientists have designed brain fitness for us, and for a healthy workplace, it is key. The stronger and healthier the brain's ability to decode data, the stronger and healthier are its higher level cognitive functions. You'd never go into a boxing ring without physically training to put up a good fight. Likewise, leaders, managers, and HR who want to battle efficiently against bullying and gaslighting in their institution need mental training. The second proven way examines interoception, which is how we interpret information coming from our internal bodily systems. Applying this knowledge to the way we construct emotions from this information is a vital way to discern the manipulations of those doing harm. Those who tell the self-serving lies of bullying and gaslighting use our emotions against us as part of their repertoire for doing harm. Leaders, managers, and HR can ensure that their workplace is well educated on how we construct emotions, how we articulate them, and how much a nuanced and doubled up vocabulary can help protect us from perpetrators' attempts to confuse us. Gaslighting is all about making us replace our own relationship to reality with their lies. We learn how to resist this manipulation. The third proven way unpacks why our threat detection system, or neuroception, fails us all too often when it comes to the self-serving lies of bullying and gaslighting. We build on previous insights into the dual presentation of abusers that leads us to drop our guard right when we should be on high alert. Becoming more skilled at reading the environment, informed about how our nervous system fuels our feelings of safety, supports an understanding of how vital connection and community are to the way we handle stress that inevitably comes when we are being manipulated. The goal for safe, healthy workplaces is to prioritize the balance that comes with homeostasis. The fourth proven way trains us to resist our brain's tendency to habituate to almost every workplace environment, regardless of how safe or how sane. Instead of normalizing our environment and the behaviors of our colleagues, we learn strategies to become far more perceptive. We learn to double up our vision so we don't only fall for what's right in front of us, but also consider what lies in the background that may prove to be risky. The fifth proven way teaches about how our brain tends to take intuitive shortcuts that make us highly susceptible to manipulators. We need to apply the discipline of thinking slow to stay sane and safe. We call this technique proprioception as a way to stress the importance of balance in our brains and bodies when it comes to establishing a healthy, accurate understanding of what is reality. The final and sixth proven way looks at how our brains are double in their construction. The left and right hemisphere have different ways of constructing reality, and knowing how they work together and separately is key. The left has an opportunist approach, whereas the right is more altruistic. Once again, we see the critical importance of balance as we're moving toward workplaces that tend to be dominated by the left hemisphere, with its narrow focus and essential self-interest. We need to create workplaces that never ignore the right hemisphere and it's bigger picture that cares about connection, relationship, and community. Most of us who are targeted bullying at work are caught off guard. Because we are not trained to anticipate manipulation, we're easily victimized. I wish I knew then what I know now. The more aware we are of how abusive brains operate and how our brains are completely thrown off our game by them, the better able we are to prevent workplace bullying and gaslighting. The more leaders, managers, and HR are informed, the less likely they'll be drawn into institutional complicity. Those who tell the self-serving lies of bullying and gaslighting with ease are part of a formidable trio referred to in psychology as the dark triad: narcissists, Machiavellians, and psychopaths. Throughout the Gaslit brain, we'll refer to them as the dark triad. If you're interested in their differing brains, see the bully brain. How can we identify these manipulative people more quickly and refuse to believe them? What if there were a way to protect ourselves, and more specifically our sanity, from lies? What if there were proven strategies we could use to keep our minds safe from shattering? These are the questions that drove the researching and writing of the Gaslit brain. I needed to answer them because I was being gaslit at work. And that's the end of the introduction.
Oh my goodness. Jen, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was absolutely phenomenal. There are so many comments in the chat. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I did want to put up our QR code. If folks have not had a chance to purchase the Gaslit Brain, highly recommend doing so. I am finding that as I go through it on my own, I'm taking in different kinds of information when I read it versus when I hear it being spoken. And I'm finding it so helpful to be able to highlight and, put notes to myself and go back into it. And I know that other people are as well. I'm seeing that in the chat. I want to just encourage people to let us know how this event has been going for you. We're going to continue to meet on Saturday mornings. When we use StreamYard like this, our only option to interact is through the chat. We also have the capacity to meet through Zoom, where we could have more of a webinar experience. People can turn on their cameras, turn on their microphones if they want to, but don't have to. And then we can have more of a dialogue if people would like that. I'm going to go ahead and take down our QR code from the Gaslit Brain retailers where you can purchase it. And I'm going to put up now a QR code for a feedback form. Very short, takes less than 2 minutes. And it would really help us to make sure that we can continue to evolve this event in a way that will make it the most helpful for everyone who takes the time to log in. While we've got that up, I just want to read a couple of comments to you, Jen, because the flowers are here for you. Your work is changing lives. And I will never stop saying things like that because truly, Jen, for many of us, finding your book is an absolute game changer. And your writing on Substack, your posts on LinkedIn as well. So Kim Shore writes, as an advocate calling for change in sport, Jen has been a key force in keeping me sane for 7 years as I hold, sports organizations accountable. Repeatedly in sport, survivors are gaslit from old childhood, quote, you're a bad athlete, end quote, to being an adult whistleblower, quote, you're just bitter and have extreme views about child abuse, end quote. Perhaps Jen could share her expertise in calling institutions to account without losing oneself. So if you have, a couple of quick insights on that particular comment, love to hear them.
Yeah, Kim Shore and I are very committed colleagues and friends who are battling to see the sport organizations change in particular. We were both very involved in the Future of Sport in Canada Commission that just came out, and it has 98 recommendations because they found that from grassroots sports with little kids, we're talking little kids, all the way up to our national sports, they are so rife with abuse. And this is really, this is what this is all about, is this has become so mainstream. It's so normal to abuse children all the way up to adults in every single institution that we're involved in. And this is why this is important. We have to speak up. We have to draw, the best way to debunk a myth is with science. And that's why I draw on the brain science, because I think they can teach us a ton about how to change this. I know we can change it. And I know Kim Shore knows we can change it. And it's just a matter of rolling up our sleeves and not giving up and putting in the work and staying sane, as Eliana and I are staying sane through community and connection. It's the most important thing.
Absolutely agreed with that. And I think that part of what can happen for many of us when we're traumatized, and especially when we've had early life trauma, and that's very common. Many of us have experiences of trauma in childhood or adolescence, early adulthood. And so when we end up in an abusive workplace and are traumatized by it, it's not our first rodeo with trauma. And there can be a very quick decline into isolation. The shame, the self blame, the self doubt, all of the um, experiences that are the intention of gaslighting somebody. This is by design. It's not by accident that we can end up feeling these ways. It can just be devastating, especially if we have earlier life trauma. And the fastest way for many of us, and it can be very uncomfortable at first, but once we get past that initial discomfort, anxiety about are we going to be accepted, but when we can actually connect with other workplace abuse survivors, that's where we start to realize, oh, it's not about me. I am not broken. Other people across industries, across job titles, across in sports versus education or healthcare, the law, all of these areas of life have gaslighting, and people across the positions in these worlds can be targeted. And we learn that when we're around in community with other people. So really appreciate everyone who is logging in here today and the folks who are watching this after the live event. That's part of the reason why we're doing this on LinkedIn Live. So that way there's a recording that people can access. I know many of us go to LinkedIn when we have been targeted by workplace abuse and gaslighting, and it's where we might find our next job, but it's also where we might find a sense that I'm not alone. And to that end, I just want to point out that Astrid writes, I found immense relief in this book because it provided an explanation for the experiences, what they are, how they work, why we fall into the trap, why most others cannot see through them. It is sanity affirming. Jen, I cannot thank you enough for the time that you have spent with us here today, for your writing, for turning your own lived experience of abuse and trauma into something that can help other people heal. We've got about 4 minutes left in our session today. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the group?
I just found that comment so moving because really this is a bit of a battle. I mean, we are in a war on truth right now in our society, geopolitically. We are in a war on truth. And what Astrid just said is that if we work together, if we draw on the brain science, we can affirm our own sanity and demand truth telling. We don't have to fall for this destruction, this what Rebecca Solnit calls violence against truth and facts. We do not have to be complacent. This is an important battle we're in, and I'm so thankful and impressed for all the people that are showing up to say, yeah, this matters. Let's do this hard work. It's Saturday, who cares? Or later in the day, I'm going to watch it. I just think this is the way we can, grassroots make change. And I know, Eliana, you believe that too. So thank you everyone for being here. We're going to keep working away at it. Share the videos with people, please. Let's get the word out. Let's create a movement.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you to everyone who has logged in. I've placed in the chat a couple of additional resources. If you are looking for an employment attorney, the National Employment Lawyers Association in the United States is a great resource for many people who are thinking about their legal rights having been violated at work. It can be kind of scary to think, oh my gosh, where am I going to come up with the money? There are many attorneys who will work on a contingency. They do not get paid until you get paid. And many attorneys will provide a free, no cost, 20-minute consultation I see somebody is writing in the chat, let's take our power back. Exactly. And I've been providing expert opinion to court cases and am finding that books like The Gaslit Brain are extremely important to our ability to fight for our rights. And attorneys, judges, juries are catching up. They really are. With this brain science, we can now show the impacts in ways that we couldn't in the past. So whether you read this book for yourself, or for your workplace, or for a friend, a family member, or colleague, we are delighted that you're here and welcome you to send us messages, DM messages. I know both Jen and I are available on LinkedIn and welcome direct messaging. Thank you to everyone who has completed the survey. I'm going to put it back on stage just for one more moment because we really do want to hear from you. If you would prefer to have future sessions where you can turn on your camera and ask questions yourself, we'd love to hear that. Or if maybe you really liked the way this format worked, where Jen reads for about 20 minutes and then we have some conversation in between. We want this to work for you. So Jen, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for writing this book and your generosity in being here today. And to your publisher, I wonder if we might give a shout out to your publisher as well. I know there was some great work that they've done on their side as well, getting this out.
Yeah, let's just say thank you to Jonathan Kurtz at Prometheus Books. And let's say a big, huge thank you to John Willig, my literary agent. They are just a remarkable pair. They're fabulous.
Outstanding. And thank you to everyone who's here. We will look forward to being in community with you next Saturday. We will send out links to the next session. And thank you all so very much. Have a great afternoon.
Till next week.
Till next week.